Alex, how have you been, brother?
Past 4 months have been absolutely a whirlwind, to say the least.
Yep.
Had a daughter. She is the most amazing thing in this world. I wouldn't change it for absolutely anything. She is perfect, but there is a draw that it takes on you. But like I said, would not change it for a quarter of a second.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Face of Pain podcast. Today, I have a very special friend of mine, been part of my life for an extended period of time, and hopefully, we're going to tell some good stories about it. Andrew Hayes, what you been up to, man?
Life has been good. It's been a little monotonous and a little boring and a little day after day, but that's probably the best thing for me right now. It hasn't always been that way for me, but man, I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to see you guys. Everything looks great. Yeah, man, I'm just excited to talk a little bit.
Yeah, man. I'm excited to have you. And, we've kept in touch for a long time. A little bit of our backstory is we obviously went to college together. We were in the same fraternity, lived together, really bad boys type stuff. I mean, have experienced some true moments together, up into and including getting into fights, even with some of our own people at times. So,
Yeah.
so we really did live on the far edge of it, and we had a good time. But it is, like you said, the getting into a good routine, building good habits, and kind of shedding some of those childhood habits, if you will, is a weird road. It's not what you think it is. You think it's going to be something that you like hit the crest of and then it's over with, but it's really just a long and winding road of ups and downs and succeeding and then failing at the same thing over and over again, really probably till you die.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think for me, I mean, being like single with no kids and sort of getting somewhat close to that point of like marriage or engagement or whatever, and then having kids, seeing guys have kids around me, man, and I've got two friends now that have both got kids that are 10, 12 years old that are playing sports, and just seeing how much it's changed their lives, I think, and how much emphasis they put on it. um Sam is coaching his son's football team, baseball team, everything.
That's awesome.
And so I think, but for me too, I have to like look around sometimes and think like, okay, how am I going to add value to my life at this point in the absence of not having a wife, of not having kids? But you also have time to do other things, to try to volunteer to help people out where you can. So um, I don't know. It's kind of that battle between like what is freedom to you? What is it? Being able to go where you want, when you want, do what you want, or do you have a certain freedom that comes from like knowing that life is pretty secure and you're around the woman and the people you want to be around with for the rest of your life?
Yeah, it's a complete parallel shift or a paradigm shift, I should say. For me, freedom didn't lead to good execution of anything. It led to a bunch of activity, but not a lot of great execution.
Mhm.
And now that I'm so, maybe worldly burdened, if somebody would say it that way, by having a wife that relies on me and having children that rely on me to show up every day, regardless of how I'm feeling. Um, and output, it doesn't have to be 100% every day. We all know that. Sometimes you have off days and sometimes you're not the best version of yourself. But at the same time, knowing when you wake up, your brain knows immediately, like I have other lives that I have to get up and do something for. And it changed everything for me. I mean, it put a lot of stuff into perspective. It put me into perspective, how I treated people, how I acted in times of anger and acted in times of where I could have been a better friend or I could have done things differently. Now that I have children, it was just like the wool was removed from my eyes. It was just like, oh, it's very obvious X, Y, Z. But when you're in the middle of it, you can't really see it, because freedom to you is, being able to have ramen for lunch and then, go and shoot pool and do whatever.
Yeah, and I think that's it. It's like in my own sort of journey, I've had to find, at least try to seek some way to get outside of myself. Um, and I think having kids obviously is a way to get outside of yourself. All of a sudden, like you said, I mean, there is a bit of a burden of like, okay, these people are depending on me, but also to have these little kids depending on you, your wife depending on you, whatever it may be. I mean, that gives you a lot of purpose. Like you don't have to search for purpose and meaning at that point.
Right.
I listened to an audiobook, but Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning.
I have the book.
Yeah, man. I mean, gosh, like, and I think the thing that was good about the book was like, you obviously, he's a doctor, and then he goes through the Holocaust, and he talks about, okay, you can find meaning in your work, you can find meaning in love, or you can find meaning in suffering. And I think for me, like, at different points in my life, all three of those have been present in some way, and it's like, which one is pulling me at that point?
Right.
And then his talk sort of in the middle of the book about how the meaning of life is probably not going to be this white light moment that just snaps and everything changes in front of you. It's more, your life can mean something one day and mean something the next. It's a moment to moment thing. And sometimes I think any of us, we get annoyed with work, or we get annoyed with some mundane task we're doing. And it's like, okay, right now, the meaning of Andrew's life is to go and do his laundry, and, to go to bed at a decent hour.
Right.
And to try to meal prep for next week or whatever it may be. And I think that was a really like original thought to me, to not try to find this overarching thing that's going to solve, but you find the meaning of life, and everything sort of falls at your feet from then. You're able to take it moment by moment, day by day, and say, okay, what is the meaning of my life in this moment or in this day? So,
Yeah. That's amazing, dude. I couldn't have said it better. That's unbelievable, because I got the book given to me by a mentor when I'd first gotten into sales, and it kind of hit home. I understood it, but it resonated more, like you're saying, as I started to have personal meaning that I didn't even shoulder on my own necessarily. It's like, as you're developing a family, that meaning is developing along with it, and you're learning what output is really required of you. I thought that the hardest thing that I was ever going to do was, wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, ruck 18 miles or something. And it's, what's hard is picking up your kid for the 50th time when he's like, Dad, pick me up. And you're tired, your back's tired, you're ready to lay down, you want to cut Sports Center on. Everybody's been nagging at you at work. Work was hellacious. Nothing went your way. Doesn't matter. Kid does not take any of that into account. So for me, it helps me to stay out of negative mind frames, because, like, no matter how far I travel off into that negative mind frame, I only have a certain period of time until I'm right back into my work that I know is good and I know is fulfilling. And kind of like when we were in college and doing all this philanthropy and helping people, you just know that it's right. Like, nobody has to pay you for it. Nobody has to show you. You just know that it's right. And Alex has been going through a lot of that too himself, of, for a long time, part of the search for meaning that he was on is to have a child and to build a family and to grow a life and to be a bedrock of your family, because honestly, that's what men should strive to be. I know that there's this big corporate push to have a corporate husband who's an attorney who's gone all day, and to have a wife who's like in medical device sales and she's gone all day, and have the nanny raise the kids and all that. But that's why you don't know your kids when they're 18, 19, 20 years old, and you can't get through to them emotionally. And that's why they go through a lot of emotionally damaging things in their teens, 20s, 30s, 40s, and later even.
Yeah.
And it's like, for me, I found my meaning in being a parent that can intervene in that. And I'd love to hear Alex's experience a little bit on just having a meaning fall on you,
So one of the hardest things that I found personally, like, the search for meaning was very hard, like, because we had a miscarriage, we had implants that didn't take, and like years and years of IVF, IUI, all these different things. Like, there was a lot of searching going on, not just in the search for meanings, but like, I got to a breaking point at one point where I was just like, I don't even care about anything anymore. And I just almost became numb. And then literally one day I was sitting in my office, I was playing video games. It was just going to be one of those days where I just did nothing, got nothing done, wasn't going to be productive at all in any shape or way or form. And my Bible was sitting on my bookshelf that is directly to my left from my desk. And I was like, I grew up my whole life. Like, I got into church a little bit and then all this stuff. And I like to think, oh, I've lived this kind of life. And I was like, right then and there, just sitting there on that mundane day, I was like, I'm going to read this book and I'm going to look at myself and I'm going to really just criticize as hard as I can on myself. And I'm about to change this because, like, that kind of chasing just got so monotonous and I lost my feeling for everything. And I was just like, today's the day. And that was March of 23 when I first picked up that book, read it cover to cover. And I don't read books hardly at all. Like, I can name non scripture related books on two hands that I've read. It is just not, it has never been something that I've wanted to do and sit down. But I sat down, read that book from cover to cover, and golly, stopping at points, crying, just thinking to myself, like, what in the world? Why am I feeling like, why did I let myself feel this way about myself for so long before I searched for that? And that was my meaning for 2.5 years before we got Lacey and everything. And I'm so, so thankful that I did have that moment, because I do feel like reading that book, making that decision has prepared me to be a father way better. And like you said, the kind of corporate idea of a mom, a dad, both working and a nanny raising the baby, it got under my skin so bad after reading that book. Like, because like that was kind of like the idea in my head. Now, I didn't want that to happen with my child, but like just knowing that that's how a lot of people operate really got under my skin. And I was like, that's not going to happen. And I'm going to do X, Y, Z to make sure it doesn't happen, because that's my role. And I'm about to do this to the best of my abilities. And like, it doesn't matter. Like, it might even be the end of my abilities. And I just have to keep going past that point. It doesn't matter. Like, because no matter what you can do, it's God's plan, God's time. And you can think you're going to do all these things, and God will throw you a curveball immediately. And he's like, you thought this, but I really had this plan for you. I'm glad you're doing that, but you're not. And just pluck you straight from where you are and just drop you in the next spot. And it is amazing, terrifying, and beautiful all at the same time. And like, when we were going through the journey and me and Rachel were thinking, this is the time. Wasn't that time. Wasn't God's plan. Wasn't God's time. Oh, it's going to be this time. Just all the times, doesn't matter. We were in the perfect situation because that is what God wanted us to be in at his time. And it's his schedule from start to finish. But once you can kind of throw everything to that, and like, you have to say, I'm giving it my all every single time. And you have to go out there and just grind that every day. But you might be going for X, but you get Y.
Mm-hmm.
But it was the plan the whole time to put you wherever that was.
Being with you through that storm, you know, there's so many times, and you tell it eloquently, but I saw the brutality of it. You know what I mean? I saw the letdown.
Oh, yeah.
I saw the, oh, well, maybe this time. And by the time it's the 15th time, you get to a point of where it's almost just like, it could be the 50,000th time. It no longer matters. I'm just crushed every time. I'm not even looking forward to being crushed because I know the crush is coming.
Yep.
And to see you get over that hump, you know, and now with having Lacey and being like, I'm so tired, bro. I'm going to get to work as soon as I can, dude. And it's like, yeah, man. Yeah. It turns out babies don't care about your 9 to 5. They don't care about if you're sick or any of those things. And like we're talking about, it gives you, well, to the people who are willing to take the challenge on willingly.
Mm-hmm.
You can't force somebody to be a mother or a father of a child. And I think that's what a lot of people that are our age struggle with is we had mothers and fathers, but we didn't necessarily have like emotional support people in our lives. We were very lucky to have our mother, and my mother was deeply supportive in my emotional well-being. And it's like, if I could trade financial well-being for emotional well-being, I would take my emotional well-being 100% of the time, because I've had way more money in my bank account and been way less happy, and I've had way less money in my bank account and been way more happy.
Yeah.
You know?
Kind of going back to the book and the part about finding meaning in suffering. Like, am I going to be equal to whatever this is, and like in your situation, not falling into resentment and not letting it affect your relationship. You know, and staying on the course of that, and obviously like working out for you, and you at some point being able to look back and say, hey, this is kind of what I needed.
Yep.
Because I will be a better father, I will be a better man because of it. And I think that's a huge part of it, man. It's just not allowing those things to pull you under and keep you there.
Yeah.
And I've done that so many times in my life. And I think that I really, you know, I told you yesterday, like I really struggle with the God stuff, you know, pretty often. And what's funny for me is, you know, when things are going well in my life, I don't even think about it. When things are going poorly, I have someone to be mad about. I'm pretty much like, why have you smited me, God?
Right.
I'm in this situation. And so I had to really like take a look at that and think like, okay, well, when I'm doing poorly, I'll point the finger like at someone, and it's not myself. And so that's been part of my journey, and I'm still, you know, still figuring some of that stuff out.
One of the hardest things, how you just said, I'll point that finger at someone else. You might have done everything right, and God just had that different plan and plucked you and put you somewhere else. Like you could have done everything to the best of your abilities, and it just wasn't God's plan or time.
It's definitely an interesting thing. And, you know, kind of to bridge what you guys are talking about, I personally, I've made it to Chronicles, and I started reading the Bible audio, listening to the Bible, chronologically, like in its actual order, not in the order that people go, oh, a 365-day Bible read or whatever. I'm reading like every single sentence, and I'm not taking anything away that anybody at any church has ever told me. Like what I'm taking away is the moments where God says, these people did this thing and this is bad. And I'm recognizing that morally from reading it, I also know morally, just like you're reading the law or anything else, you're like, yeah, that makes sense. If this, then this. And so I basically have just been going through and looking at subject verb agreement of like, to me, like Alex is saying, if you build yourself around that, not around God, but around being a man of honor, being a man who always does his duty, is responsible for his family, takes care of people less fortunate than him, always has a handout, is not worried about stuff in his pockets with interest off of other people's money. If you do those things, you don't have any other choice but then to be happy and successful. Because at the end of the day, like I get more happiness out of helping people than I do people helping me. I always have. If somebody helps me move a couch, I'm very thankful. If I help somebody move a couch, I feel good about it.
Yeah.
You know? And I think that it's really a human thing. And we push people so far away from those human and emotional elements of like our being that you just lose sight of it, you know, and hard to get back to at times. But with the Bible, I'm not reading it. I've had a not great relationship with the church. Heck, he had some issues with the church, and he's like perfect. You know what I mean? Compared to me, like I go into a church, people look at me. You know what I mean? Like if you want more people in the church, step one, stop judging everybody when like I know that your husband's cheating on you.
Yeah.
Like I know that, Susan. So like relax.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we're both here searching for the same thing.
Yeah.
And so like if we're both broken and our goal is to heal, then it's not a time for me to condemn somebody. It's a time for me to be there for somebody and say, oh, I do see that you're going through relationship struggles. I do see that you have a family, that you're having a hard time differentiating if you're going to be able to separate those two or not. And like being there for somebody. Instead, she just gets an attorney that charges her $15,000 and the shit gets split in half. You know what I mean? And it's like we've removed all like emotional mediation from everything. And I think it's by design. And for me, reading the Bible has instilled a lot of that back into me. And kind of like you're talking about with the things that I've struggled with as far as like even in current events and like the ICE and Border Patrol and all of that kind of stuff. I get recentered and I like feel better when I know that no matter what, I'm doing everything that I can to be the best person I can be today. And if there's a problem, then whatever that problem is, it's got to meet me in the red clay.
Yeah.
Like it's gotta be in Alabama, and it's got to be the time.
Mhm.
But until it's the time, there's no sense in stealing somebody else's sorrow.
Yeah.
Now, I can be empathetic and I can have opinions and viewpoints and all that kind of stuff, but I don't have to let it drag me down. And I used to let it all just,
Yeah.
I lived for the success or the failure. If I let somebody down, it was my life's mission to double down and get a win so big that they were no longer upset with me.
Yeah.
And now it's like I've realized sometimes people are just upset with you, and sometimes it's not even about you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think from the time we probably all grew up in similar religious sort of, backgrounds and I think for me, like I still don't consider myself to be a Christian, but I know on my journey I've kind of like looked at different things, you know, Buddhism and like Bhagavad Gita.
Mhm.
It's the one that he mentions in Oppenheimer,
Yes.
and even reading that, it does seem like, telling you like, just looking at stories from like hundreds of years ago, books from hundreds of years ago that people have written, and it's all kind of pulling us in the same direction.
100%.
And I don't know, like I don't know what that means, for religion or for me or anything, but it's like there is something different out there that I think like most things that are outside of yourself are pulling you towards. And I've always had, we can kind of talk about some of the politics stuff, but it's like religion and politics, especially in the South, have always, come together for me. And I have such a hard time splitting those things up. And I think that's why I got angry with the church originally. And like at the time when we were in school was right after the gay marriage ruling. And that was still like a very, very hot button issue.
Right. But we had friends like that we liked.
It was like the stuff that was going on, like now you would look back on that and say, well, that was obviously the right thing to believe. And at that time it was people were having consequences over it. And it was like, I think like me and like I think you were maybe there a few times. It was like the young Republicans, of like UAB or Frederick County or whatever, and I was a part of it. And the girl that was kind of head of like the Alabama Young Republicans ended up being removed from her position because she had come out and said, this is not something government should be involved with. We shouldn't be chopping and changing over who gets married and what that looks like. And they took her out of her position for it. And I was like, man, I don't like this. I really don't, because I kind of agree with her. And, I started to move away from religion and from the Republican Party. And then really in my first 2 years at UAB.
Same. I mean, dude, one of the biggest, I wouldn't say crisis, but like one of the biggest, like personal, who am I and what are we practicing here moments for me was Bhavna. So we went to school with this girl. She was Buddhist. She was perfect. She had a 4.0 GPA. She was beautiful. She was insanely intelligent, eloquent, all those things, didn't drink, did nothing wrong. But according to like everything that I'd ever been taught, she was going straight to eternal hellfire and damnation. And me, the dude who's actively like doing everything that they tell you not to do all at one time, as fast as I can, get an auto pass into heaven. Well, I had a hard time with that. And then, like you're saying, I did a little bit of my own research and started realizing like where all of it intersects is what I consider to be like worldly morality of like, this is the thing that whatever divine and or scholars, whoever it may be, they wrote all this stuff down. And what they're trying to get you to is to work together, to help each other, to look out for each other, because we are, even though we live in all these houses and we're all separated, we're a tribal species. That's why you see the political tribal warfare and you see everybody pick a side and then anything in between just gets murdered. I post one thing, I get murdered by my Republican friends. I post the other thing, I get murdered by my Democrat friends, And it's like, number one, I think that whatever God may be is too large for us to understand. And I think that if God made everything and all of that, and everybody's creation has God making all of this, then whatever has been made is him. So like when you have that feeling, that calling to do something more, I think that's God. I don't think that it's like God and some sort of ghost walking you around and steering your arms and legs. I think it's whatever the river of our souls flow into together when we die. Like, I think whatever that thing is that makes you walk by that homeless person, and even if you don't donate, you feel that little thing, whatever that is, that's intertwined in all people.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if what you believe, you know, everybody knows when they did something wrong, you know, and you just know.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think something, just a thought I kind of held close over the last, 5 or 6 months is like God is either everything or he's nothing. And it's like if God exists, then everything that happens, everything that we live through, the way the earth works, it's God's a part of that. And yeah, I mean, I think even like in like the Hindu scripture was talking about, it kind of pulls you again to like getting outside of yourself or being able to walk whatever path you've got. And it kind of goes into some like reincarnation and things like that. But kind of the point of that is almost to say like you can't control this stuff and you can't live like sometimes you can't live like you've got one crack at it. You've got to like look at what's in front of you and you've got to be able to address that. And you've got to, like Frankel says, you've got to be equal to your suffering. Like, what is this going to mean for you? When you go through bad things, when you go through tragedy or triumph or whatever, are you going to be equal to that? Are you either going to be able to like keep yourself level because things have gone so well, or are you going to be able to pull yourself up when things have gone really poorly? And that's really what has been guiding me for a while now.
Yeah. I think that's what changed it for me, is the exact same thing of going, you know what? Like sitting in church pews and like going to church and seeing all these women that I'm actively having sex with, acting like
Yeah.
they're being something different. You know what I mean? And then me getting shunned, I'm like, that's not where God is.
Mhm.
Like, because wherever God is, like he's trying to help me with like my problem, which is obviously coveting things and wanting achievement and feeling like achievement comes through women.
Mhm.
And so it's like the church should address that in a different way. And if they knew how to address it in a proper way, instead of just looking for a donation to build a well in Africa, then maybe
Yeah.
people would show up.
Mhm.
But instead they don't, you know.
No, I agree. And I mean, I think, and you've, a lot of people, especially young men, have gone down this path. But like when you're a kid, you think like the happiest time of your life is going to be the time when you're like having the most sex with the most women. And you kind of look back on it and it's like, yeah, it's not that it wasn't good. It was just never enough.
Right. Because the limit didn't exist.
Yeah.
Because I was trying to fill a hole that was infinite. It was a black hole,
Yeah.
you know? And it's like, what do you fill it with? You don't actually fill it. What you do is you turn it around.
Mhm.
And then once you realize, like, I changed my mind from living inside of me to like being a conduit. And I'm just trying to push out good on my kids. So that way they'll push the good out on other kids. And that way, when they grow up, there'll be a good world left,
Mhm.
even if all of the rest goes horrible, like we're talking about. Where their feet will be, like if you're in the room with my children, I want them to be a place where you know that you're safe, where you know that you can talk about the hard stuff,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
be taken care of.
Yeah. And that's something, I mean, my sister and I laugh about it. We had a conversation about it a couple of weeks ago, but the way that our parents mostly like viewed sex, and like we are that generation of people that like for the first time ever, porn became very accessible to very young men. And I don't know what the implications of that are. We probably won't know for a while, but it's even worse, I assume, for kids now.
Gotta be.
You can't get on anything, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook might be a little different, but like it knows you're a young man and it's going to show you stuff you want to see.
Exactly.
And I just, like I said, my sister and I laughed about it, but my dad sat my sister down after she would hate, I hope she doesn't watch this, but she would hate this, but I think it's happened to a lot of young women, especially in the South, and she had her first period.
Mhm.
And of course she's like horrified, feels terrible. And he's like, listen, this happened to you because of Adam and Eve, because of original sin. This is God's punishment for women. That's why this is painful. That's why childbirth is painful. That's why you have to go through this every month. And it just horrified.
It's the wrong pamphlet.
Yeah.
And that's
It's like you can get pregnant now. Every boy you talk to is trying to have sex with you, like put a baby inside of you. It's just awful shit. And I look back on it and I'm like, man, I would never ever say that to my daughter.
Right.
and or to anyone. But at that time, he thought he was probably doing the right thing. He
Yeah.
was telling her the cut and dry. And I think sometimes like what things, because there are things that I think about with my parents where I'm like, man, they're really backwards. They really just don't have it figured out. You know, they're like bigots and things like this. I'm like, what issues 30 years down the road, you know, or your kid's gonna look at you and say, man, my dad, he just doesn't understand.
Yeah. I know what it's going to be. I'm
Yeah.
not going to say it out loud, but
I mean, but that's the thing is like, you know, all this stuff just changes and it like morphs over time.
Yeah.
And you know, I think ultimately we do become more progressive as a society, and we probably have become like a more. It's like we get a peaceful society, and then we're like, well, we're kind of worried about getting soft a little bit. Everybody's getting soft. Everybody's crying. Everybody's, you know, we're not working out as much. We're not outdoors enough. And so you're kind of always fighting some battle, but it's like, what is that going to look like? And I think with politics, you know, I mean, again, like being more liberal, like you look at kind of what some of that and even like we talked about sort of this manosphere, like, you know, Rogan or whoever it may be, and how that affected the election. And I think ultimately, like, Democrats had a really hard time convincing men and especially young men, like, hey, we're looking out for you.
right.
Hey, here's someone you can, because Tim Walz is not it.
No.
He wasn't the guy
Hmm.
that you're going to look at. Like, yeah, and he obviously didn't know what he was talking about when he was talking about coaching football.
Yeah,
Because obviously
exactly.
he hadn't really coached football.
That's the problem, is the obvious lying is what gets, like, the Democrats will try to lie for manliness, and you can't fake manliness.
And I think there's so much Republicans get wrong about it as well, and sort of what they push to be masculinity to be. But I mean, do you think for you guys, like, have you found that sort of an easier thing to do? You once you had like a kid, were you thinking like, you know, this is what it is, like this is what masculinity is, this is what it means to be a man? I feel like more of a man now that I've got this thing.
So I have a two-sided answer to this. So I thought I had a view of what manliness was, had a child, it changed, and I'm striving to look towards that and move towards that. And the political side of that, of having a child, has made me almost hate everybody for different reasons and different amounts, for sure. Like, to the point where I'm looking at people and just thinking, who do I hate the least? And it really bothers me.
Mine was a complete shift. It was a complete flip. It was, I thought that being a man was achieving. It was like, as long as I could stack whatever it was that I'm stacking, if I'm selling robots, then I'm selling robots. If I'm doing whatever, I'm in the army, then I'm kicking ass and being a good leader, you know? If I'm playing rugby, I'm the captain, I'm running the show, you know? Always wanted to be the guy, like, both hands, both feet on everything. I want to be in control. And yeah, I lost all that for every piece of the world except for my family. And it's like, that's the piece that's the most dear to me. That's the piece that I'm willing to change anything for. If there's a part of me that I discover that's bad, which I take stock of myself all of the time, because I do have children that I know that I'm just a direct reflection onto, and they're just seeing whoever I'm portraying, you know? Yeah, and I had to completely reevaluate what being a man even meant, you know? Because I even saw a lot of people when, you know, you're in high school or you're in junior high and you see these other parents, and, you know, you've got the married family and they're doing okay, but they're pretty quiet and kind of off to themselves, but you don't know why they're really off to themselves. You later learn they're off to themselves because they're the only normal people in that entire gymnasium. And you've got the divorced parents, and you've got the mom that shows up to the wrestling tournament smoking hot, and you've got the dad that shows up like covered in oil and is like working himself to death. And like, you see all of the different things that you took in as a kid, and then you have to reevaluate them and decide which parts you want to transfer over and which parts you don't want. So for me, it's like, I got blessed in the aspect of, I got to learn through osmosis what manhood was in a lot of ways, from outdoors, working on things, being the guy that people call when something breaks or something goes wrong. standing up for people, leadership, all that. That was like second nature to me. I basically didn't need anybody to tell me anything about it. Nobody told me like how to be emotionally responsible. Nobody told me how to recognize that somebody else is in a bad emotional state and maybe there's not anything that I can do to change this and turn the ship around and be the hero that I always want to be or whatever. Sometimes you just got to eat it and get through the hard time and wake up the next day and fix it, you know? And just providing is not what you think that it is. Like, for me, providing was like make the number at the end of the year go up on my tax returns. And as long as that goes up, then I'm providing more for my family. And then I basically flipped that on its head and I put myself in a position where I can provide way more for my family. I take my kids to school in the mornings. I get to have their breakfast with them, take them into class, give them hugs and kisses bye. I get to roll into work when I need to. I can pick them up, all that kind of stuff. They have a field trip, I can go to it. That is supporting my family. Like the dad that makes $250,000 a year and spends 30 minutes a week with his kid is not providing for his family the way that he thinks that he is. And by the time that he recognizes it, they're 18 years old. And it's like, it's even a problem. I've talked with a lot of the people that you would say like would fall into like peak manliness. And they struggle with their wives and like being nurturing toward their children. And then they're like, well, you know, my dad was really tough. And so I want to be a disciplinarian and I want to be like what I imagine being a father is. But my wife isn't really meeting me on the other end where my mom met my dad, if you will. But they don't know how to navigate that. And I always am just like, dude, hug me. And like, what do you mean? I'm like, go talk to your kid, hug your kid. Like if they want to play with toys, you just pull the toys out. You sit there and listen. They'll tell you everything that they have on their entire brain. They'll tell you everything that they can remember if you'll just sit there and talk with them. And it's like, when I do that with my kids, their behavior is different than if I'm gone for an extended period of time. Same thing with their mother. And it's recognizing, focusing on those things, seeing like, I never had that. You know, my dad was involved in my life. I'm not saying that, but I had no emotional regulation coming from my father. You know what I mean? My dad was football and wrestling and baseball and all that. And we crushed it and we achieved great things together. We built wrestling teams together. I mean, we did some nut stuff, but at the same time, like, I mean, you think he talked to me about his hard day at work? Heck no, you know? And it's like, I'm not going to talk to my kids about my hard day at work. But at the same time, I want them to understand that when they have a hard day at school, this is why, these are the things around it. And this is how you get through it. This is what tomorrow's going to look like. And it's going to be another opportunity to have a great day, you know? So it changes big.
Yeah.
And for the political side, like you're saying, having daughters changed a lot for me. And being a man and protecting myself has never been like a thing that I'm afraid of. But having daughters and having a son, and you don't know how somebody may grow up or what they like tend towards or what they want to do. Like not all kids want to do Brazilian jiu-jitsu. You know what I mean? As much as I hope my kids do, they might not. They might want to do gymnastics. They may want to do fashion. It doesn't matter. I'm going to support them in it. But at the same time, like I don't like when you realize, okay, I identify with this area of this law or politic that this specific party is trying to push. And you say, okay, well, now I'm a Republican. Well, then when you come around to things like you're saying with gay marriage, and it's like so very apparently clear that it really just does not affect anybody but the gay people. And it's just a law prohibiting gay people from being able to have what they're trying to have. Like the law was not set in place to protect straight people. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It was set in place to prohibit gay people from having the same right that all people do. And if all men are created equal, like it's not up to me to tell you what you should do in that category. I can feel however I may want to feel. But like I believe being a soldier and doing all the things that I did in previous, that's what I signed up for. Like I signed up to protect the church and the Church of Satan. Like I protect all Americans. And so like, then you see parties starting to split and stoke fire underneath each other and using propaganda on our own people to enrage the other sides. And now people aren't even looking at people like real humans. That's like what happens when you have a kid that's on one side and a kid that's on the other side. You end up in the Civil War, dude.
Yeah.
And it's like people don't recognize how close, like Minnesota, for example, was to civil war. Like they don't recognize that when the governor is in control of the National Guard, he's mobilizing a state military.
Yeah.
And the president can't manipulate it unless he declares a state of emergency in which he's intervening in that state. Well, so if he did that and Tim Walz didn't want that to happen, you have a war. It may not be declared, there may not be anything signed, but that's civil war. And so when Trump was saying, okay, we're not gonna work with the local authorities on any of this, we're gonna use all federal stuff, and it's all these people, and we're doing it like this. Well, that's why you don't have an outer cordon on your mission. That's why you have civilians in the battlefield, because I'm not looking at this like some sort of thing I don't know. I'm looking at something like I do know. What they're doing is they're trying to capture high value targets. So if you want to capture a high value target, the first thing you do is you make a circle that doesn't let anything out of it. Then you make a circle outside of that, doesn't let anything inside of it. Once you have that, you've established where you're trying to go. If you're doing it in a city, it's like at least a quarter of a mile, if not a half a mile, is what your radius should be.
Yeah.
And it's like, if we're not doing any of those things, and we've got politicians manipulating these levers, and they're going, oh, well, you do this, well, I'm going to hit you harder over here. And people are dying. Like whether or not I agree with what were these people breaking the law or any of that is completely aside from the fact of that they're Americans, dude. And if you're trying to tell me that we're trying to save America by getting rid of illegal immigrants and we're killing Americans, then I have a hard time conceptualizing how that math works, right? I mean, I understand we have to fulfill this job, but I've seen it at the highest levels and I know what we're capable of. So like we're showing force, we're not running missions. If we're running missions, then you should see the little person who's from a different country running off in the background, and where are those shooting altercations? Where is it like where you just see the bad guy run across the corner and like, oh, we almost got him, rats. It isn't.
Yeah.
It's a bunch of white people on the side of the street. Most of them are like 50, 60-year-old white ladies. And it's like, I'm not saying that all of them are in their right mind. I'm saying that we have people in our community that have disabilities. And like a person with disabilities has the right, just like I do, to do all of the things that I do. And they should be protected in those cases. And I'm not saying that all people that protest have disabilities, but I'm saying that you can't just treat people like all military-aged males and like college grads, because everybody has a varying IQ. Everybody has a varying experience of understanding law and order, and understanding that if you're on the curb, you're protesting, and if you're in the street 2 feet away, that you're now impeding a federal investigation. You're now a felon and like considered to be an assailant because you stepped inside of a cordon, which is true, right? So it's like both things are true at the same time, and the politicians are just loving.
Yeah.
Like they're loving.
I think so. And I don't know that it's, planned necessarily. I think everybody kind of gets, everyone in power sort of gets what they want from it. But, I was talking to someone about an interview that Steve Bannon did right before Trump was elected for the second time. And he just said, like, listen, what we're going to do is things are going to happen so quickly that you won't be able to latch on to anything. That the news will move so fast that you won't even, by the time you go out and protest for this thing, something else has happened. And you've gone from Maduro in Venezuela protest, that's rolled into, hands off of Greenland,
Right.
sort of stuff. And then you have the woman that was killed, and then you've got this guy that was killed. Maduro was what, a month ago? Less than a month ago, and no one even talks about it anymore. And that's like, I don't know, 20 years ago, it feels like I'm only as old as I am, and I've only kept up with politics as long as I have. But it seems like 20 years ago, that would have been a really big story if we had gone to a sovereign nation, plucked their president out, brought him back to the U.S. and chucked him in prison. Like that would have been a story for 3 months. It lasted for a week. And so I think part of like the reason why like nothing really gets through is you sort of like, you have to make decisions on what you believe so quickly, because the next thing is coming.
And you're going to have to make another hard stance. So that way everybody knows you're either pro-police, pro-ICE, anti-ICE, anti-police, Antifa, the Black Panthers are back. Like, you got to be part of some cult in order for people to believe that you're a good person. Like, you can't look at stuff like you're saying with the shooting and say, dude's breaking the law. I fully agree with enforcing the law. However, I think that the use of force was probably a little extra when he got 10 rounds in the back from 3 feet away.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you should be able to make a statement like that and people not want to cut your head off, and understand that that doesn't mean you don't support the operation, doesn't mean you don't support police, doesn't mean you don't love America, doesn't mean that you're not a patriot. It means you're the absolute apex patriot, because you're standing up for people that no longer can stand up, literally. You know what I mean? Like, who's going to give a voice to a person who's dead? No one. Why do you think they want the story to go away? Because no one can speak and it's over.
Yeah.
If they can make it go away, it's over. And so for me, it's like, what a wild thing to experience as somebody who I would consider myself traditionally conservative. I've always said I'm libertarian / independent. Everybody tells me that makes me a maniac and puts me on a terrorist watch list.
Yeah.
Probably. But, you know, it's one of those things where I go, man, if this was happening on the other foot, we'd be freaking out. And I'm going, man, why is nobody stopping from either side and going like, dude, we got to change it. We have to change. If you can write legislation and write $6 billion off and, like, you know, make the whole thing and have it out in like 30 days, but you can't change like immigration law to allow people that have been in America who are on like a long-term green card or whatever, who've been working, have shown proof of like having worked for over 10 years, done all this great stuff, paid into taxes, like done actual stuff. You can't just give them citizenship. Why? Because you remove 13 million people. Well, you remove 13 million buyers from your market, which is the biggest thing that would hurt everybody. Is every store you go into, you're removing 13 million people or something like that. I think the number is out of all of that. That's an economic downturn. Like, I promise, there's only 6 million people in fucking Alabama. There's 2 states worth. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things where I don't think we really understand the game and the high level that it's being played at, because it's like, we want to be able to keep foreign aid because these politicians are getting paid off the foreign aid. So they got to keep the foreign aid running, and they want to do the immigration stuff because they promised on that. And it gives them a big like show and it can swing emotions. But like, we've been letting immigrants in for centuries.
Yeah.
And like, overall, I wouldn't say like we haven't had like truly the MS-13 army like walk down a street and massacre a bunch of people. I haven't seen it yet. Now, do I understand that there's risks of drugs and all that? Absolutely. I think there's risk of drugs everywhere. I think that our government sells drugs sometimes. You know, I think that everybody's government sells drugs. I think China's government's sending drugs into Canada and moving it in through the northern border because we're caught up with the southern border. But most people can't stomach for you to say all those things in the same sentence. By the way, you're halfway through it, they're like, you don't understand, man.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I mean, I think there's context to all of that. And I think particularly with immigration, like, we probably more than any country in the world have benefited from globalization and from, you know, these markets we've created. We control a lot of that, and our military might is able to enforce a lot of that. But we talk about how you know, how much we love the country and how much convenience and freedom we have. And hey, people want to come here. And I think, you know, both of you guys, and again, I'm not in this situation, but if I had little kids and I was in another country, and things weren't going well, I'd be trying to make it to America as well. You know, and whatever came next, I would try to figure out. But you see so many people, and it's like us growing up, I think particularly like in Pelham, there was a pretty large Hispanic population in Pelham, like, you know, for that time, and like for, you know, Alabama. And man, like, within whatever it's been 20 years, like, most of those kids have like started their own companies.
Right.
You know, they're like, they're doing really well, and people assimilate, like, and that's what this country's been for a long time. And I think it's pretty obvious that there are a lot of jobs that immigrants are doing that most Americans wouldn't want to raise their children to do.
100%.
And, you know, whether or not you want to like send your kids to school or have them work in a trade, you know, we don't want to have factories making T-shirts, you know, in Birmingham. We don't.
Right.
We want our kids to do something else.
Right. I don't want an AI data center, you know, and like, hey, look, if you want to subcontract it all out to Mexico and put it in the same areas that they're putting all of the car plants, because that's how America's rerouted our issue with car manufacturing is we just put all the manufacturing plants on the edge of Mexico. And so they're manufacturing everything in Mexico and they just ship it directly over in like sub-assembly, and we put them all together and we say, made in Texas. Shit ain't made in Texas. But anyways,
It was puzzled in Texas.
sorry, but to your point, with assimilation and just, man, we went to one of the most diverse colleges in the United States. I learned so much in such a short period of time, with religions and all those things. Yeah, there's some differences, but overall, on the whole, I feel like, especially with like Islam and things like that, it's kind of like the Westboro Baptist Church being classified as Christianity. You know what I mean? Sure, there is radical Islam, yeah, if you want to like call it in some sort of weird political term. But there's also a lot of people that practice Islam that are a lot better than agnostic people, Christian people, all those things, that do a lot more for a lot more people. And I've seen it, man. I've been to funerals and I've seen people pass envelopes around until the thing started off empty. And next thing you know, it's a thing full of cash for the widow. And it's like, oh, those people are horrific. Yeah, you don't know. Like, you're just taking your preconceived notion that somebody sent to you and you're sticking it on there. If you say, okay, for example, I know there's an issue with the Somali migrants. Well, if you say, okay, Black Hawk Down, the movie, Somalia, right? That's where it was. Same people now in America having problems over here. So if you look at it, it's more of an IQ problem than it is a religion problem. Somalia is a place where education is basically non-existent, and object poverty, have some of the most incredible beach line, could be absolute beautiful. It's a complete wreck, ran by random people, basically, all of the time. They're the pirates that were jumping on the boats a few years ago, and now they're running daycares in Minnesota or whatever. Sure, I'm sure they are, and I'm sure that people help to facilitate all those things and whatever. But like, it doesn't mean a Somalian person is bad. It doesn't mean you don't give a Somalian person a chance to, like you're saying, find a better life if they are a person who like is of high moral character, who is in dire need, because people are getting freaking murdered over there. Like, I have a hard time watching murder on my phone, and then people just be like, yeah, that was a murder. I'm like, dude, do you understand that's a human being? Like the Gaza thing, bro, and Israel and Gaza. I was on the exact same thing that every other person was, exactly when I was told to. And then I saw a picture of the nothing that was left and the rubble that was left of Gaza. And I went, holy shit, they're not targeting anybody. They leveled an entire fucking people. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I don't personally support it. And I was like, okay, well, we support it with millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Fuck. Morally, I feel wrong. You know what I mean? And like, what are you arguing? Because the more information comes out, the more you find out, kind of like we're talking about with the issue in Minnesota. Like, they're saying that he may have been in like a previous altercation or whatever. Well, like, that's information and you can use it, but everything's kind of rated at separate instances, I don't know. It's really crazy to me for people to pass judgment so quickly on people they have no idea about. And, I have opinions of all these politicians and I don't know them or whatever, but at the same time, like, that's taxpayer dollars. Your police are taxpayer dollars. ICE is taxpayer dollars. Border Patrol is taxpayer dollars. When was the last time we actually got to vote on anything that was like, when was the last time that we got to say, yeah, we agree at this point you get to shoot people, escalation of force? No, they would never give that to the common person. They would never allow you to say, yeah, right there, taser. That's where you tase that lady. Like, number one, it's a moral thing. So they don't want people to drag it too morally right and go, hey, you should never electrocute a person.
Mhm.
Jesus Christ, you shouldn't electrocute a person.
Yeah.
Like, we outlaw the electric chair. I'm gonna semi-electrocute your ass right here in the street and watch you shit your pants in front of your family.
Yeah.
Like, maybe we shouldn't, but at the same time, like, hey, if you don't have a taser, then your next move is to a pistol. Well, if your next move is to a pistol, that ain't a tase. That's the end of all eternity for you.
Mhm.
And so for me, it's like, there's so many things that are hot buttons that they put us on, like escalation of force. I ain't never going to get to say shit about that. They're never going to let me vote on that. They're never going to say, okay, yep, you know what? In fact, all people that are in the military and law enforcement, all of these roles, the government is bringing in jujitsu for everybody. We're bringing in real combatives for everybody. We're no longer skipping it out or making it 3 days, and that's all you get to learn for your entire career. Like, we're really doing it. Because you see the people that are doing it at the highest levels, the police that are executing the high level stuff, the SWAT guys, the super cool guys that are doing all that cool stuff, they're training on their own, doing some other stuff. And that's how they're getting to that level. They're not getting it through just showing up and just being part of it and doing what they're told to do. They're making hard decisions because they've trained their mind to make those hard decisions, not because, well, in this thing, it says, if this, then this, you know, because if you're sitting there and you're trying to remember what a book said to you while something bad's happening, that's going to make you nervous.
Yeah.
You know,
I think you hit on a lot of like really important stuff there. And I think I found, even with how, not necessarily, I don't know that we've been desensitized to death, but it's like, you know, we do, a lot of us grew up watching live leak, you know, videos from the Middle East of like people getting their heads lopped off and things like that. And we played video games, whatever. But most of the people that I know that are ex-military are the people that you can talk to about these things, and they're the ones that almost have the most compassion because they've seen some of these things like pretty up close and personal. And I think it's very easy with Gaza, even with, you know, Ukraine, or even you know, with the people that have been killed in Minnesota. It's pretty easy to like be desensitized to those things. And I think with, you know, you really never know what any policy is going to bring. And kind of when you were talking about the policing thing, I think there was probably a lot of like law enforcement people that would have pushed back against like, you know, these body cams, feeling like they were sort of being watched all the time. But when you think about it, the last few years, sort of since body cams have been in use, like they've kept us away from a lot of like really, you know, kind of iffy situations. As far as like, hey, you know, someone said this happened, you go back and watch the body cam, or the people will release the body cam footage. And I mean, I think transparency is so huge, and hopefully we can get some transparency in what's on the last, you know, the 2 killings that have been in Minnesota. From what I looked at, and I don't have any kind of background on it or any specialized knowledge, but I think the state of Minnesota like can technically charge those guys with crimes. But if you go to like the federal level, you know, they can kind of come in and say, listen, these guys were acting, if they can prove it, that they were acting like within their rights, within their duty of what they were trying to perform while there, then they'll get off pretty much scot-free. And I think it's kind of to go back to what you were talking about at the beginning, like probably one of the best things about this country is we are 50 different countries inside of one country. And so ultimately, whether it's like the, you know, Somali population of Minnesota, or even how so many people, hell, I ran into a guy who was, you know, a representative, like a federal representative, and I just ran into him in public, and I talked to him for a second, and the first word out of this was, you know, a couple of months ago, and the first words out of his mouth were about Mamdani, the guy that had been elected in New York. And I was kind of like, man, the people in New York wanted to elect this guy. What does it matter? He just thought like, you know, we were going down a certain path, like as a country. And if that's what it takes, you know, one guy in one city being elected, and those people, like democracy at work, they decided they wanted this person to represent them. It wasn't like if Cuomo had been elected, all the Republicans would have loved the guy.
Right. They didn't like him in the first half. You know what I mean?
And so, you know, I think it's like we're seeing this, and you know what's going on in Minnesota. Like, there's, you know, part of like Minnesota will have to deal with that. What's going on in New York, or Mamdani does well or poorly or whatever, like they'll have to deal with that. And we have to, in Alabama, we have to deal with what we deal with. We're kind of lucky as people to be able to move around in this country, or like be somewhere in this country where we kind of are okay with what's going on. And I'll tell that, you know, they may not be true for everyone, but like, you know, the guys in my family, you know, that want to complain about the stuff going on in the country. And it's like, well, you live in Alabama. You live in the middle of Alabama.
You live in a place where you're able to complain.
Yeah.
Because you're so removed from it. It's almost an afterthought.
And you're around all the people you really want to be around, if you think about it. And, you know, I think with like Israel and Gaza, like I know that's like a really that's the deep end of the pool. But the thing I worry about with like America and sort of the future of America is that we get to a point where we've isolated ourselves, or we become so nationalist or like America first that the entire world turns against us. And
I
like,
think that's what we're seeing a little of.
yeah, and the Greenland shit. Like, come on. I mean, do we need it? Do we want it? What are we going to do to get it?
Can you say that you're going to buy it instead of I'm going to take it by military force, so that way, like, my mother doesn't have a heart attack every time? You know what I mean? Like the politicians don't weigh like the public's emotional well-being. They don't go like, oh, well, if there was civil war, there'd be about, I don't know, 15 million military age males die. Like, what? Do you know how different our country would be after that? For either direction, it would be so forever changed. And it's just like you're talking about with being 50 individual countries inside of a country, it's great and it's bad. And part of after post-Civil War, one of the things that they did that's caused a few of these issues is they basically ceded the power at the federal level. And then the states have basically free reign until the Fed wants to step in and go, no, not that one, And so that's where Minnesota was fighting, was federal versus state on what was supposed to be occurring, basically. All right, guys, we're back from the break. So anyways, here with Andrew Hayes talking about some fun stuff. Also named Keep the Khajiit on Skyrim.
Yeah, man, Skyrim. Like there was an Oblivion remaster. I haven't played it, but
I played it. It was whack compared to Skyrim, because when we went through Skyrim the first time, we weren't going online and like finding ways to solve the problems. We weren't like going through it in the proper order. We were just playing it. And so you just got the whole experience. You'd find the Black Hand or the Red Hand, whatever that group was, and you find like the Thieves Guild and all that. Me and Hayes, we played all the time. He'd come in, he'd be playing at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning.
I was not good at it either. As much as I wanted, like you had like the smithing, you had leveled up smithing and heavy armor to like 99.
Yeah.
I had like the little assassin. I didn't really know what I was.
Yeah, you're sneaking around flinging arrows at people.
I don't think I ever beat it, but what a great game. It's, I don't know, 15 years old now, 10, 15 years old. Crazy.
Oblivion's a weird game because it kind of has traces of Legend of Zelda in terms of puzzles and things you have to solve to move forward and things like that. Like you were talking about those 2 tower missions you got stuck on. It doesn't direct you the way that games do now. Right. Games are like, walk down this hallway, take a left, and you're going to see an ogre. You have to kill him. And then you go through, he'll drop a key. You unlock a door that's right behind him. And it's just so straight line. Oblivion was so great specifically because it was open. You could do whatever, but you had to find your way through the whole thing. And Skyrim is kind of that way, but it is the line of perfection. It's still open world. You can do whatever you want, but it wasn't too far on that puzzle category, and it's not too far in the walk here and do that thing.
Right. If you wanted to do the Thieves Guild, you knew the direction to take. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely. It was a good game. It was fun. And it was fun to have something to kind of relate on. And I think that's why men are drawn to like video games and things like that, is because number one, you get to kind of be in full control of something. You don't have any other outside. Like for me, I play single player video games. I'm fully old. You know what I mean? Like for a gamer, I might as well be a great grandfather at this point.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where it's fun to be able to kind of do that and kind of wind down, but also, part of playing games is the camaraderie and having people to talk to, because guys don't go to therapists. They go to the Xbox lobby and say, dude, you wouldn't believe how mad my wife is at me just for cutting my Xbox on.
Yep.
Dude. It's, you know what I mean? And so it's a double-edged sword, and kind of like that with social media and things of that nature, where it's like, some of it's great. I love to be able to keep in contact with people that, I've known for a long time. And on the other hand, it's like, do I even really need to be in contact with people that I knew 15 years ago? I mean, maybe some of them, and all the ones that I really care about are still around. And it's like, I wouldn't need it just for that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's kind of evolved into something more. We're obviously mainly a YouTube show, if you will. But we do post like stuff onto the social medias for our immediate close people to see and know, hey, that's where it's at, that kind of thing. And it's become like a business front. And then it's also like part snuff film, part porn, we haven't even talked about it, but the OnlyFans thing, like, man, as a masculine male, I can't even fathom it. Like, I have a hard time coping with people spending money inside of strip clubs. I'm like completely off of the train on paying somebody $25 a month to see their feet or something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I don't understand, like we're talking about. I may be libertarian and like view like, well, yeah, you should be able to do OnlyFans, but morally, I don't think that it's cool that we regulate all these other things and we're just like letting this go. It's like, okay, well, we're gonna kill Pornhub or whatever, and then you unleash OnlyFans,
Yeah.
and it's like you didn't do a service to the community. Same thing with social media. Like, we're gonna stop showing you your friends and we're gonna show you big booty Latinas, and it's like, hey, I'm not objecting fully, but at the same time, like, I'm a married man, like,
Yeah.
I have a family, like, I'm not looking for these types of things, and it's still like it's gonna pop up inevitably, like you said. You know, you can look at as many outdoor and sports and UFC stuff as you want, but eventually there's a hot girl that posts something about the UFC, you know, and then you're watching it and absorbing it. And it's like, you can't remove your kids from it. You can't remove yourself from it. It's not whether or not you encounter those things, it's how you act on them. And like, that's great, but that's like more responsibility than gun ownership almost in a way.
I've thought about it a decent amount, but I think originally it was kind of this idea of like, listen, almost, you know, and the realm of like trying to empower these people that wanted to be in this type of work. Where,
Like a fan club almost.
Yeah, you're not
like
going to have
niche.
like this porn director, and I'm not going to tell you, okay, you got to have sex with this person or that person. You can like, you know, interact with someone. If they want to give you money, they give you money. And I see the idea behind it, but then I think it's almost like we've got too much access to people that we really don't have any relationship with.
Right.
I don't even, and you know, sports is the same way where it's like, I don't need to know everything about Josh Allen's life.
Right. Let
you
the
know,
man live.
yeah. And I think, it's been easy to sort of replace, you know, what is human interaction or what is community with things outside of ourselves. And I think, you know, going back to video games and kind of rolling into like a discussion about identity, like where do we draw our identity from? Is it, you know, it goes back to the Frankel thing, but like, is it in being a father? Is it in our work? Is it in how successful we've been? Is it in the sports team we cheer for? Is it in, you know, how much Fox News we watch and how much, you know, we're Republican or Democrat, like who we'll interact with and who we won't? Where do we draw the line? You know, and I think everyone's in a struggle for identity. And, you know, I was thinking about you and I and like being in a fraternity, and most of your fraternity guys, at least at UAB, were like sports guys. And I think for me, you know, I didn't join the fraternity until my sophomore year. And man, I spent that freshman year of college like in an identity crisis. Because I'd grown from the time I was 6, I'd been on sports teams. All of a sudden, I had like a pretty hard cutoff at 18. And I get to college and I'm like, I don't know who I am. I've been Andrew Hayes football player for however long. Like I need something else that's going to like help me be who I am, who I think I am. Like tell me who.
Right.
And so the fraternity was like a pretty good, you know, step in for. Now I don't know. I think there's obviously some people it's very good for, some people it's very bad for. As far as the stuff it introduces you to, and kind of almost the confidence and like arrogance it gives you.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden you're at a party and you know everyone there.
Yeah, power.
You can talk to anyone the way you want to.
Right.
Treat anyone the way you want to. And then obviously with having pledges and things like that, I think there's a lot of like, and you know, I know you and I weren't two of these people that did this. There's a lot you can tell about someone when they've got what is almost complete control over someone else.
Right.
Someone is truly subservient to them. They can tell them what to do. And even if it's, you know, sometimes it's like more sort of, you know, logical things like, hey, help me do my homework, or hey, go print something off for me. And then sometimes it's like deviant.
Yeah, like I carried a concrete statue of a dog around 2 city blocks in downtown Birmingham, just like this. It was a 50-pound dog statue, and I had to walk the dog. You want to know why? Because basically Stone Cold said so. And so that's what I did.
Yeah.
And to your point, like, there's some really beautiful things about it, some really horrific things. Volunteerism, being able to work with people and help people, and actually, like, I don't have to worry about if my $20 made it to the well in Africa because I just helped this person directly in front of me. You know what I mean? And that was huge for me, like you're talking about, huge for building who I wanted to be as a man, was being in a fraternity and being part of that team. And then also, like we did, getting elected to high positions within that team and leading.
Mhm.
And it's like, man, that's sick. Also, abused a little power every now and then, like
Mhm.
abused a lot of stuff, like
Mhm.
because you don't understand how to handle that power. And so, like, we were blessed enough that we had good enough people throughout our group
Mhm.
that it kept the left and right limits pretty well intact.
Yeah.
And that's what I worry about. Maybe kids in this generation looking at fraternity life and that kind of thing is we were the last group of fraternity people where, like, dude, Snapchat didn't come out until like 2 years after we were already brothers, right? And like taking pictures at parties, like those pictures didn't make it to the internet for like weeks, and half of them never made it.
Mhm.
They were like sent between texts and they died in your razor,
Yeah.
and it's just over with. It's just blips in time. And so living in that moment, the way that the females acted, the way that we acted, a little bit of, like you're talking about, the power and the ability to fail, but also not be life altering failures. You know what I mean? It's huge. It's definitely like a free trial run of like being a high level successful executive, being like part of a winning sales team, any of the things that you may like want to aspire to be, you can go in and learn. Hey, this is how grown men argue. They don't argue like me and my dad argue to this day, and I'm 35.
Mhm.
Like they say, all right, we're going to have two people speak up for the subject matter. We're going to have two people speak up against the subject matter, and then you guys are going to vote, and then we're going to be done with this thing. And it's like, if we followed Robert's rules of order in like more actual, like in politics, they tell you that they do that, and they do it when it comes to like voting and stuff. But they don't do that on the front or the back end, which is like where you conglomerate your argument.
Mhm.
It's like they put together 57 arguments in one argument and go, yes or no. It's like, no, one at a time, every single one, no matter how painful it is, one at a time. But sorry, we got a little off track.
Yeah, I mean, but I think there is something, and I know we talked about it a little bit, but people, my brother-in-law, someone that served in the military and saw a lot of like pretty terrible things close up, and um, has like extremely cogent arguments for not going to war, for
Right.
the effect that the war has on lives, and just has a very good like grasp of humanity. And I think, I think the things that we and like with the fraternity, I mean, there's 50 guys in it, and there's 10 guys on one side that are going to be the best role models you could ever have, and 10 guys on this side that'll be the worst role models you could ever have. And it just, I think it's our exposure to things and how we handle that. And I think with anything with war, like, and I'm someone that grew up only knowing death from live leak videos, and from video games or whatever. Uh, and it's tough. I think even though we've become more connected, the world's become more connected, and we're able to see more. Seeing it every day kind of takes away the sting of anything, or everything almost gets made into a joke of some sort. Everything.
Yeah.
And I think that's like in some way how we deal with it, how we stay away from the seriousness of it, or how we keep it from affecting us. Is by making comedy out of everything.
What really bothers me, like how you just said, the comedy thing. I can't stand when something crazy happens and you see a meme of it
Mhm.
with some stupid lettering or
Oh
whatever.
yeah, like the Charlie Kirk thing. Charlie Kirk was literally created into an entire, you know, it was a Vine, it was a TikTok, whatever you want to call it, but it's a jump scare
Mhm.
basically. And it went from being a jump scare that got dropped on the entire world to being like a jump scare that's a joke about like Republicans. And then it's like a jump scare that's about his wife. And it's like a jump. And it's like, don't get me wrong, I don't agree with a lot of the stuff that anything has happened. And I don't have to get all the way into the full Charlie Kirk shooting, but I'm not fully convinced that any of it happened the way that I believe, like that it's told. And that's my biggest problem with all of the issues we keep having is the way that it's told is not the way that it happened. I know for a fact. And so you need to tell me the real truth. And they go, you're too stupid for the truth. We could never give it to you. And I go, then this is not in any way set up the way the forefathers said it was supposed to be set up. you know.
And I think there's enough that happens on either side where it doesn't matter how you, and if you want to look at it like in some, dichotomy, like you can look at either of those. You can look at anything that's happened in the last few years, whether it's Ukraine, whether it's Gaza, Charlie Kirk, the two people in Minnesota recently, and you can say, well, look at the other side and how they treated this very horrific thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of where I really just don't know what the answer is. I don't know if it's. I think for certain groups of people, and I'm not, really here to say who that is, but every things hit people differently, and I think like, yeah, we cared a lot about Ukraine because you know, we feel like Ukraine is a Western country that got, we see ourselves in them,
Right.
or being like, a white American. I see myself in Ukrainians, and maybe for some people they don't see themselves in the people from Gaza. And I don't know. It's hard to. I think that like really, what we're battling against is you've got people to people trying to tell you what you should care about. And you kind of have your own idea of that. And then obviously the people closest to you are the people that you care about the most, and that's going to affect you the most. But our sympathy and like our compassion, like where do we place it? There's not enough to go around. We can't probably care about everyone the way we want to, but we as a country, as people, like you'll latch on to like certain things and totally forget about others.
Yeah. Well, that's like what you said about the military. It rang so true to me of like, dude, I just so bad have to almost avoid, like, I have to be honest with myself and say, okay, it's impossible. But, dude, our bases should be in America and our firepower should be in America and our borders, both, like the immigrant crossing and all that. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying actual, if you trace our land, should be protected so heavily by airspace and air road space because we have the capabilities to do all kinds of crazy stuff, that it should just all be the most state of art thing ever and it should be impenetrable.
Mhm.
I don't really, like you're talking about. On one hand, I'm pumped that Delta went in and snatched a leader in the middle of the night. Crazy. Oh my God. Can't believe it. They'll make a movie about it.
Mhm.
And then I'm like, they also like unleashed Toby Keith on me and convinced me that like this wasn't about to be a 25-year freaking war, that we would just feed children to the meat grinder to inevitably turn Afghanistan back to Al Qaeda. Like if you live long enough, you just see it changing hands between the good guys and the bad guys, who, however you want to label them. And then by the time you get done with it, like for me, I almost am afraid to say it publicly, but like I started thinking about if people were in my backyard, and I was like, if somebody came into my neighborhood and shot the guy who lives down the street from me, I don't even know him. I don't know his family. I don't know anything. It's straight war.
Mhm.
If he shoots my neighbor and he's walking down my street, I'm shooting him. And because that's what you do. Because there isn't the whole United States of America on your street. There's just your street. And so all those people that live over there, they may not agree with ISIS, or they may not agree with Al Qaeda, or they may not agree with whoever the next group is that you want to name. It's the fact that those people live in that country and they spend all of their time and effort in that country. And it's not our responsibility to create a revolution inside of something that's not ours, And it's just like you're looking at in Iran. So Iran used to basically be America in the 80s. They had women walking around in like t-shirts and regular stuff. Boom, quickly went back to more of like a institutionalist, like monarch, like some may call it a dictatorship, but it is what it is. Everybody's under some sort of rule. Whether or not you agree to it. Now they're switching right back to the group that was removed right before that group. And it's like, you got to let the people have what they want. It's kind of like we're talking about with gay marriage or trans rights. Like, dude, human rights are human rights for me. And like, if you can get like breast implants when you're a completely flat chested person, or get your face reconstructed when you're completely busted, and like, hey, that's gender affirming care for straight people too. You know what I mean? Like, hey, you're just affirming like what you believe a peak ideal woman looks like. And you may be a female and you may be getting breast implants and a BBL and whatever, but how is that in any way different than like transsexual people feeling the same exact desire. It's like, look, I don't personally think that it's healthy. I don't think it's great for you. I think that it's really, really hard on you emotionally. But like if life is really hard on you emotionally and you decide as a sovereign citizen to do something, it is not my job to get in your way. In fact, it's my job to say they have the right to do that because they're an American citizen and we allow American citizens every day to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I guess like going back to sort of like the, the way the world views us thing that we were talking about earlier. Like I'm not a world traveler, but I've spent some time outside of the country, and I was kind of taken aback by like there was a couple of people that I met. There was a Colombian woman I met, and we talked, and kind of within the first like 10 minutes of the conversation, she said to me, like, you haven't said anything about like Pablo Escobar and cocaine. She's like, every American I meet, that's the first thing out of their mouth. Like, oh yeah, like Colombia, cocaine, and she's like, cocaine ruined my country. And that cocaine was being sent to, Miami, to America.
Right.
She's like, you have no idea, the impact it's had. And she had a really, really bad view of America. That a girl that was half German, half Syrian, and she had gone to Damascus for a wedding a few years prior. She's like, America pretty much took Barack Obama, like ruined Damascus. She's like, it's the oldest city in the world. It is a beautiful city. And my grandmother's house has been bombed out twice. And she had a really poor view of America. And I think that we do, even if we think we're the world's police, or even if we think we're bringing democracy to these, but whatever it is, ultimately we're putting our hands in something that we really don't have that much control over. We don't have control over the way people think in these places.
It's their right to think however they want to think.
Yeah.
Like whether or not I agree with arranged marriages has nothing to do with the fact that it's on them to do. It's not my thing to do.
And I just think like we don't realize the impact of these things. And then again, I think the only way we can really mess up is by isolating ourselves and by turning our backs on our allies. And and I say that, and maybe you don't know like who's coming into office next or whatever, but I think we should think about that and think that like there hasn't been a lot of cases in the last few decades of America getting involved in a situation and it turning out and everyone saying, wow, good on America, we did a great job.
Right.
Y'all did a great job. We really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, it's basically since Vietnam, unfortunately. Like, and that to me is why people are killing themselves at a rate that's far more than 22 a day. Is the moral weight of making, like we're talking about with all of this, a lawful decision. You know that you can do it. You know that it's like right according to that paper. But as soon as you do it, you get that, oh, man, why are we putting so many 18-year-olds in that scenario? Like for the regime change to change back when they're 30, like, man, that's heartbreaking. Like, could we put them to work in our own stuff? And I don't know, make the roads work. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like some really simple stuff. And it drives me up the wall because I'm sitting here going, states need to try to gather their power back from the federal organization, but they basically post-Civil War blocked that. They basically have done everything they can to make everything but like country law versus state law. And our country, like, I don't understand why we've got NASCAR politicians who are sponsored by more people than Jeff Gordon ever dreamed of.
Yeah.
And they're saying, as soon as you give me this 2 million, I'm going to send you 2 million back in aid directly to your country. And then they do it and you can see it and it's on paper and it's clear as day.
Yep.
And I go, how on God's green earth does it happen? But it's as simple as this. I'm not going to name names, but the time will tell. And I'm not trying to disparage this person. He's a phenomenal person. He's done some really awesome things. There's a local person who ran for sheriff in one of the more close around here areas. He got destroyed by the incumbent sheriff who's been the sheriff for like 10 or 15 years. This dude is extremely talented, Navy SEAL, like does heroic work, rescues children from sexual abuse and stuff. Got destroyed in his own local area for for a job that he's overqualified for on paper, right? And now he's running for senator, and he has the wind underneath his sails of every social media company posted on the same day. He's announced. He's running for senator. He's running, you know what I mean? And so, like, all of these conservative conglomerate thoughts put out this info. And if you look at the traction that this dude has, he surely would have wiped out the person that won sheriff in the place that he lives. And he's got a better chance of winning senator. And it all almost directly relates to him vesting his interest underneath President Trump and saying, I'm going to be, when I get elected, I'm going to go and help run Trump's plan, just like with critical mission efficiency. And it's like, that's sick. And I do appreciate that to some degree. But like, I don't want you to run Trump's plan at all. Like, I want you to run the Constitution's plan full. That's what I want. Like, I don't care who the president is, because he's not going to be the president eventually. And like, you'll probably still be there. So if you're still there, like, I want you to run the plan of the people. I want you to say, like, I have a pulse in Alabama. I know the people. You know what I mean? I know what they want. I'm taking in outside information. I'm voting according to that. I'm not voting on party lines, but you can't divide it. So it's almost to a point where, like, I'm seeing the physical altercations go in that civil war. I'm looking at the political altercations and I'm going, this is an unfixable event. And I'm thinking, like, how far is that until you reach a tipping point, until either you're controlled by maniacs or you have a revolution? And in no case is it good for America. You know what I'm saying? And I'm just going, man, why do the people that are in power not see? Like, I know they see that, but if they see that, how are they putting out like bullshit tweets and like arguing with regular people online? And like, dude, what? It's like the Twilight Zone for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I was thinking about this on the way over here, but it's like that old saying of like, rappers want to be ballers and ballers want to be rappers. And I think that politicians want to be rich people, and rich people want the power that politicians have. And I think for us, like, normal dudes, what are we to do, really? I think it's obvious that protesting doesn't exactly work.
Protesting is a risk to your life. And like, I personally would not suggest it. Now, do I think it's an absolute right? Absolutely. I think that you absolutely have the right. But I need people to understand that a protest is not going to get anything done. You have to start fighting in the legislation. And then if you're going to do some sort of protest, you got to go and get the permits and do all the proper paperwork for ahead of time.
Yeah.
You can't just show up to where people are and think you're going to run in the middle of what happens when you think you're running in the middle of ICE and you're running into the middle of like FBI taking down like the largest fentanyl dealer in the state.
And I think it's like our barrier of entry in like American public life and politics is so high because of the money you need, because of how much money is in it. And it obviously attracts a lot of people that are there for the money, that want it to be able to enrich themselves. And I don't know. It's like that's something I've sort of been, trying to figure out myself. And I mean, the only thing I can think of so far is like, it has to start at some community level. It has to start at some smaller level for each of us. And if we get enough people to do that, then at that point we can change. It'll have to be bottom up. We can't really expect the people that are here. There's too much bad influence. There's too much money. And they're probably being pulled in a lot of different directions as well. But we sort of have to like take that upon ourselves, and in the absence of any of us, coming into millions of dollars and being able to run our own political campaign, like it's gonna be difficult. And even the things you have to do, to climb in a political party, that you're gonna have to sacrifice a bit of yourself.
Just like in the military. I mean, it's one of those things where I recognize that all government organizations, I thought that they would just be like, it's a funnel upward. And I thought it would be like the top would be like the super soldier. But what you realize is like the top is the best politician in the army. Like, that's what it is. And like, when you actually make it to the top in the army, you go to the Pentagon. And then if you make it to the top in the Pentagon, you get to sit to the side of the president. And then you're a politician. And you're like, I thought we were like the hand of this. I didn't think we were like part of like the politicking, And I guess it is, and it is what it is, you know. But like you said, I think that the way that we combat it is, number one, we can't combat it.
Mhm.
Like, you can't win. It's not. There's no revolution that I'm trying to be a part of. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's no sacrifice or bloodshed of Americans that I find to be useful, you know? And so for me, you know, part of starting this podcast and just deciding to have people in to talk to is, I looked back on my life and I said, man, you know, I may not be the smartest or most successful or influential people, you know, but I've met a lot of really cool people that have a lot of differing experiences, a lot of really wise people that have helped me, like we're talking about, maybe not on the financial side, but on the emotional side, survive life and understand life better. And I think that people like our younger cousins, they have nobody that's giving them that. I mean, Andrew Tate is passing that out to people. Like, I don't know, maybe not for me, maybe not for my kids, but you know that your words with the people that you've gained rapport with way more. And so when I say, wait, let's look at this, and like we don't need to dance on Charlie Kirk's grave, and we don't need to dance on a political opponent's grave, or and make a regular human in Minnesota into a political opponent. Like, that's removing all humanity from the situation. That can't be done at the federal level, the state level, the political level, the law enforcement level. Nobody can do that. Like, humanity has to be the centerpiece. And in order to get the centerpiece back, we have to remove ourselves from this digitized, separated world and like actually have moments where we come together and we speak with other people that we do hold in high regard. And we talk about the hard stuff that maybe we'll get wrong while we're sitting here talking about it. It's not really about that. It's about sharpening each other and sharing some stuff that we've gathered so other people can benefit. Because like, I wish I would have seen a person that looked like me say, hey, you know what? I am tough. I did do all this tough stuff, but like, I cry a lot, and like, this stuff stresses me out. And like, I'm worried for my future and my family's future. And it does cause me anxiety, but I persist. I still do everything that needs to happen.
Yeah.
I still am trying, like we're talking about, I'm looking for souls, and I'm going, hey, recognize the humanity in your fellow man. Like, don't donate and round up, 65 cents at the McDonald's so McDonald's can get a tax break. That money doesn't make it to nobody, fools. But anyways, like, take the money out of your pocket and hand it to the person that's actually struggling.
Yeah.
Don't say, well, like, oh, well, you know what? He's probably smoking crack with that money. Hey, dude, if that's his last dying wish is to smoke $20 worth of crack on my dime, I'm helping him smoke that crack. I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, I know it seems silly, but it's like, dude, my humanity is not supposed to know a bound.
Yeah.
The bounds are formulated by society. And so it's like, the reason why I don't want to help this person because, oh, he might go in there and buy a bunch of old English, malt liquor. Like, hey, dude, like, you don't drink, like, so you're perfect. You don't cheat on your wife. You don't rob people. You don't like skis, like, no, dude, everybody is a victim of falling short of being perfect. And like, the moment that you're sitting here looking down upon somebody, you will be looking up one day, and a person will look down upon you.
Yeah.
And then when it happens, you'll recognize, like, you hope people recognize that they shouldn't do that.
Yeah. And like, I've never been like a big reader in my life. And really over the last year, I've been reading a lot more. And really, like, even, these really like classical, like groundbreaking at the time, and then like have lasted for hundreds of years, these books. And man, all of those people, regardless of like where they were in the world, what was going on in the world, like, they're kind of just fighting the same battles that we are. And a lot of
Get your time, dude.
yeah, and like, I mentioned like Crime and Punishment, for instance, like, such a great book, and the main character in it, it's like he's searching for something, and he really doesn't know what, and he does something, in the book where he kind of realizes, and I think we're in a similar time now, and he's in like, I think it's like 1860s, 70s Russia. He's like, there's no more glory to be had in the world. I think I'm Napoleon. He pretty much convinces himself, like, I think I'm that special and that great of a person but what do I do with that at this point? Um, and so he goes out and he, kind of does something for like a very moral and just reason, or he at least is able to, you know, place it in his head that he's doing something for the right reasons, and then he finds out he's really not as special and as above everyone else as he thinks. And his entire story, and he's really pretty young in his life. His entire story just comes down to like love and honesty and seeking some sort of goodness outside of himself. But everything doesn't happen for him until that. And all each of sort of the books I've read, like they kind of come back to the same things, and I think it ties in, at least what I believe, with what I was saying earlier. I think even a lot of religious texts, like they are pulling you in the same direction. There is something that's pulling us in a direction of love and honesty and care for those around us. Like you're not going to find it within yourself. And I think we all grow up thinking that we are. Um, and there is some kind of higher, plane there where regardless of who's, who's been killed or whatever, like none of that really matters. It doesn't matter what Charlie Kirk has said. It doesn't matter what the guy in Minnesota, did before he was shot 10 times. Like that really doesn't it doesn't move the needle for me. It wouldn't move the
Because it's
needle.
just sad.
Or arguing about these things of who and who doesn't deserve to die. There's a part of us and of humanity where that really doesn't, it doesn't tip the scales of whether anyone should live or die.
Social media has ruined everybody. Like whether it's the PORN word
Mhm.
or assassinations, regular killings, like the live leak thing,
Mhm.
just things like that. They have made it so normal for so many people. And I feel like I did a very good job of staying away from most of that stuff for a very long part of my life. I was actually watching the live Twitter video that TPUSA was putting out
Mhm.
when Charlie was shot.
Yeah, he sent it to me, and it was like only 5 minutes, but 5 minutes probably before my entire Instagram and Facebook was
Yeah.
coded.
And literally, as that happened, I was just like, I cannot believe that. Like it hit me, like it hit me as if he was sitting right there, and a bullet just went right there. Like it hit me so hard when it happened. But also because I have watched his content, and I agree and disagree with a lot of different things that he has said, done, all of things. But like, I felt like I knew him, so it kind of ripped the veil off of that desensitizing of killing and all that stuff for that moment. And I was just like, oh my gosh, that was the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. And like a week later, I was thinking about, now I was kind of tore up from this for at least 5 days.
Mhm.
But like a week later, I was just thinking about all the stuff that I've seen of like just war and killing that is all out on the internet and just out there for anyone to see at the click of a button. And it is so absolutely crazy. And that terrifies me for children today so bad. Because, like, as easy as it was for us, like when we were growing up, I'm a little bit behind y'all, but like Live Leak was a thing coming up, and like YouTube got popular. Like when I was in it was popular when I was in like going into high school, really, is when the logo changed to the red button that everyone knows today. It used to be an old tube TV with a Turner knob, but it was everything immediately uploaded on that, and you could find anything on there. And it's way easier today. I mean, I know people who can go on Instagram and find something very specific through typing on an explore page that they just know keywords for that they can go find.
Mhm.
And it's horrible stuff. But like, it has just gotten easier and easier and easier. And I think people value life not in a good way anymore. I think the value of life has plummeted because of that. And I think that's why people are able to make memes. People are able to talk the way they do about someone who literally just got shot in front of 150,000 people, or like all these different things, all because they're like, I feel like I should be able to get an abortion. Well, cool. We can talk about that.
Right.
You don't need to shoot anybody over the idea of that. That is the definition of insanity.
Right. They're not mutually exclusive. You
Right.
don't have to kill somebody who disagrees with you.
Exactly. And that's why, like y'all were saying about on the front end of arguments, that's when you have those two people come and talk and debate and all that. That's why we need to make changes there, because that's how change will happen, and on that law by law basis, instead of throwing 50 things in one thing. Like, yeah, we can vote on abortion or whatever that one subject is, because we pay those people well more than enough to be able to do that.
Right.
But instead, they want to play the lazy game of throwing everything on one stack of paper and going, this is all or nothing. Here we go.
Mm.
And it's this stupid, weird game. But back to the desensitizing. I think that it is the craziest and most evil thing in this world that people are able to talk the way they do about certain people and treat people the way they do because of their beliefs, because of just things that you can disagree with someone on. Just because I have a political difference or an emotional difference with you, or the way I look at the world, either scientifically or less scientifically, because of that, no one needs to lose their life over that ever for any reason. And also, that's part of what war is. We, as countries, we look at other countries and go, y'all don't think the same as we do. And we go in and literally wipe those people. We pluck their presidents. We do all these crazy things that just don't really even make sense. How you were saying, it doesn't tip the scale of whether someone should live or die ever. Because you think you should be able to have an abortion, cool. We can talk about that. And you could throw it up for the whole country to vote on. And if more people say yay than nay, then cool. I didn't get my way. You got your way. Congratulations. Doesn't mean I have to go get an abortion.
And well, and on top of it, like you're talking about, my biggest problem with all of these things is like, it's always, they make whatever it is so black and white or like so ridiculously one-sided that it's almost hard to agree with, because it's like on one hand, like we're talking about with like the abortion thing, it's like on one hand, you want to be able to obviously protect women and like allow them to be safe and healthy and like not die at risk, because they're having like complications with a child, and you don't want, all this or that. But like, you can't get both of them, it seems, out of our government. At least I think we totally could out of people, but it doesn't seem like you can ever find somebody who's like, okay, like we're going to limit this and regulate this, but like properly, like instead of just making it ridiculous and the biggest shock value thing, whatever it is, if it's guns, abortion, whatever, it's always like either over-regulated or under-regulated to where one side or the other would just not go for it. You know what I'm saying? Where it's like, I obviously support guns and all that kind of thing, and I have my own personal feelings, but I can't force my feelings on you or anybody else. So like, if I say like, I think that guns should ride on top of the vehicle or whatever, you know what I mean? I think you should mount a 50 cal to every truck. That doesn't matter just as much as it doesn't matter if somebody says, I don't think you should be able to have any guns. It doesn't make any difference as to what's laid out in our Constitution. And like, what's laid out in our Constitution is really clear. And if we want to regulate around it like we have, we can, but like common ground is where it needs to be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, anybody who's been in the military, Democrat or Republican, understands that the magazine capacity has no effect on how worthy that weapon is of committing atrocities, basically. Because that's what they're trying to say is like, the weapon's going to commit more atrocities based on the volume. And it's like, well, if you've got, 3 30-round magazines versus one larger magazine with 90 rounds in it, is there really any difference? And, some people might tell you yes, but I'm sitting here telling you for a fact, not really at all, unless it's fully automatic. And in that case, you're a complete criminal. You see what I'm saying? Like, so it's like, you don't ban a magazine because we already have the law that says you're a criminal if you shoot an automatic weapon. So like, there's no threat in having more ammunition, like with the whole shooting thing. I'm sorry, bounce back around, but Trump saying, well, he had an extra magazine with him, and like, I don't like that. And that's dude, you can't find a gun YouTuber. You can't find a single person that ever says this is my everyday carry, all that kind of stuff. Go find the video where they don't at least at minimum suggest you carry an extra magazine. And number one, that's political propaganda, whatever. Like that's common knowledge and actually a fact, right? Like if you carry a 1911 and it holds 8 rounds and you don't carry a second magazine, you're going to have a hell of a time beating the shit out of somebody with your gun. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's, to me, it's just like those two things aren't mutually exclusive. Let's have some rationality. And I take that for all of the things that we talked about today.
Yeah. And I think we have, and I'm as bad as anyone, like we all have some selective compassion. And I think just over the last few years, I mean, again, with Ukraine and Russia, you know, I found myself in the first few months of that war, like getting a lot of enjoyment out of watching Ukrainian drone videos where they're going and blowing up these Russian soldiers. I'm like, oh, these are bad people. And then I kind of had to sort of think like, you know, they're probably sending a lot of young people who haven't really had an opportunity to live life, who are doing this because they don't have any other path forward. They're probably sending a lot of those people to war as well.
A lot of them are going involuntarily. A lot of the territory that they're fighting over used to be part of Russia. So you do, like we're talking about, you do have a sect of people that are like, no, we moved here from Western Europe and we like inherited Ukraine. And there's people like, we've been here since the beginning of time and we're still Russian. We just don't tell nobody. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's like, we're supposed to referee this thing. And it's like, honestly, like if we're being truthful, it's kind of like the whole, you want it to be separate. I understand that. If the people want it to be separate, then I understand that too. I didn't see the vote for that though. Countries inside countries, you know, you have all these states inside of the Ukraine that exist that are just like us. And it's like, well, what if 98% of that village said, I do want to be part of Russia? And they're right there on the Russian border. We'll just let them be Russia. Well, we can't do that. Why? Because of political interest.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, why couldn't you say we're going to have a hybrid open border right here where if you're Russian or Ukrainian, you get dual citizenship and like there's going to be restrictions on your Russian citizenship. If you're Ukrainian, there's going to be restrictions vice versa. But overall, like we've been a people for an extended period of time. The only reason why Russia's blockaded is because of the United Nations and NATO. And I like talking about sometimes you gain so many friends, you ain't got a damn friend.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I mean, I think there's been a certain, like, again, with how connected we are, you know, in the world, there's been a certain veil that's been lifted where I think at one point in time, you know, it was pretty, like, we didn't have enough exposure to other cultures and other people. It was easy to like dehumanize these people. You got newspaper articles, you got some stuff on TV. But we're connected enough where I don't think you can look at any culture, especially if you get on social media and just look at the way that how popular I don't know, like K-pop bands are.
Yeah.
Or you know,
my uncle, sorry to interrupt, my uncle who's 60 years old, brought up K-pop to me. I didn't know what K-pop was. My 60-year-old uncle, influenced by the internet, told me about it. You know what I mean?
And it's like, I think culturally we just have enough, we have enough exposure where you can't make the argument anymore that any group of people is different from any other group. And
sorry, so we were saying,
yeah, I was kind of making the point. I don't even know if I'm able to express it the way I want to. I mean, I think for thousands of years, for hundreds of years, and even maybe, you know, back in the 40s and 50s, like we weren't connected enough that we couldn't convince ourselves, or we were disconnected enough we could convince ourselves that other groups of people were vastly different by race, by ethnicity, by what country they lived in. And now that veil has been lifted, I think we're all like having, you know, collectively as humanity, having a difficult time coming to terms with that. You know, and like I said, my favorite soccer player is Mohamed Salah. He's, you know, a Muslim Egyptian guy.
Liverpool.
Yeah, Liverpool. And it's like he's like one of the kindest, nicest people, you know, I could ever imagine. I mean, I think you know, even in the South here, as much, you know, as like the civil rights movement was a black eye for Birmingham. I don't know anyone that's of our generation that doesn't have like a pretty mixed friend group of you know, black and white people. And I think we've realized, even, you know, in kind of on a level like within our communities, but then on a global level as well, that we're not that different. But I think that's a tough thing to square with. You can't see you can't watch Ukraine and Russia, you can't watch Gaza and Israel go at it and really believe, I think, that that any of those groups of people want different things out of life, on the family level and on an individual level. And so when bad things happen, like, how do we handle it? And when we choose sides, how do we justify that? And I think the links of justification, whether just the stuff domestically that's happened, whether it's Charlie Kirk or Luigi Mangione, the recent stuff in Minnesota, like the links people are going to and the things that they're placing in their arguments has become like pretty wacky to me.
They're always reaching
Yeah.
to justify. And it, like you're saying, it almost feels like, people are saying that it's like a country in its final throes before it like falls. And I'm like, I think on a massive level, like Nepal just had a revolution. Unbelievable.
Mhm.
They voted via Discord,
Mhm.
which is like a online chat. Like,
Yeah.
it's like a server group. People use it for video games mainly. But anyways, I feel like it's watching the final throes of a planetary species get ready to become extraplanetary, dude.
Mhm.
I think that it's literally the precursor to us being able to live on a different planet is us being able to congeal as a people, not as a country. Because yeah, sure. Well, they'll be like Elon Musk's American Mars, like kinda. But like eventually that shit will go away. And like all the other countries will make it to all these other planets too, and we will too. And eventually we'll realize like, hey, you're not an American. We're Martian, dude.
Mhm.
And not only are you Martian, you live in Elonsville. You know what I mean? And like I'm an Elonian. You know what I mean? Like it's gonna change. And so whatever that's gonna look like, I'm not gonna be around here for. Y'all probably won't be around here for either, but like it's gonna be wild. Like Elon Musk isn't gonna be around. So there's no telling that Elon Musk doesn't get turned into their version of a deity because he brings all of the same technology over to Mars. There's no telling. Because we can't live long enough. But we live long enough right now to help the people that are around us. And we live long enough right now to talk to the people that are around us and go, hey, make sure that your spirit is good.
Mhm.
Because like your brain is going to beat you to death if you keep just looking and absorbing, because the world is in a weird place and you can try to look away. You can pretend like you don't see all of the very obvious bad things happening, but it just makes you a liar. It doesn't free you from it. Doesn't mean that like, for me personally, when I get to God, God's not going to ask me like, did you follow all the protocols? He's going to ask me like, why did you do that? Like, seriously, why? Like, this person is your brother. You don't recognize it. You got in a fight with this guy. You beat this guy up. You broke his heart, dude. You broke his Superman complex. Like, you completely changed an individual for personal gain.
Yeah.
Like, God's going to ask me that. He's not going to ask me about my damn taxes, brother.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's how I feel, at least. And that's what allows me to sleep good at night. But I know we've taken up a bunch of your time. We said an hour. We went for 2 hours. So
This has been great, man. I really appreciate it.
absolutely, man.
Yeah.
Well, dude, it was a pleasure having you on. And, you're one of my favorite people in the entire world, dude. You mean so much to me. We've had such good times, and I'm going to have you on again, and we'll talk more and more. We'll kind of lead into a little bit more of our backstory and some of the things that we did growing up, things that we can talk about at least. And, man, I'm proud of you, dude.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for coming over here and sitting down with me and sharing with us. I was talking to Alex about how intelligent you are and how eloquent you are. You've always, to me, been a great positive influence on how to carry myself, how to be measured, how to think, not just how to act, but how to go, wait a minute, in this scenario, what am I looking at truly?
Mhm.
And, a lot of my friends will tell me like, Alan, you overanalyze everything. And like, sometimes I can agree and I can become almost paralyzed by the analysis that's going on. But at the same time, dude, like my humanity wouldn't be what it is without you, dude. So
Yeah.
I appreciate you being a good influence on me.
And man, I was gonna say, you have no idea how many stories I store when I'm talking to people who say, "Well, I know this guy named Alan Jackson." And man, there's so much good stuff there. And I think when the time in our lives when we met each other and being able to stay in contact, and I'm obviously like deeply proud of you and you as well.
Thank you.
And man, I really appreciate you guys. So thank you.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
man.
man.
I have to pay one compliment before we fully sign off.
Absolutely.
So Alan told me that you speak very well. And the only time that we had like met in a real social setting was it was Alan, Mitri, Boston was bartending, Joe Gamble at Zydeco, and I was with y'all. And you weren't talking a whole lot. You were kind of just hanging out and listening to everybody. So I didn't get to hear you speak a whole lot. And then when you're in a room with Alan, Joe, and Mitri,
Yeah, you know, they're little Harry's if you don't.
all right, on it. But spent that whole night, and then he told me you were coming on the podcast, and he was like, "You're going to be amazed at how well he just carries himself and speaks and thinks." And literally sitting here, the first like blurb that I heard you say, I went, "Holy cow,
Oh, thank you.
that was incredible."
Well, it's what I'm looking to cultivate. You know, honestly, in a lot of ways, we started a podcast at an unbelievable time because we started a podcast and we're like just starting to figure out how to even get the shit uploaded. And then Charlie Kirk gets shot.
Yeah.
And like since that, it's just continually been just stuff. And it's like, we want to talk about the UFC and we want to talk about the good times. I want to tell you about the deer that I killed and all that. But dude, I can't even find it in my heart to talk about anything like that when I'm seeing the stuff that I'm seeing and I'm seeing people react the way that they do.
Yeah.
Because like at the end of the day, the only thing we have left is each other. And so it really shifted what I want to do with the podcast, what my goal is for the podcast. And my whole thing is wrapped up in a simple sentence, which is like, this is for us. Like I built this for people who are looking for this. And when they find it, they'll know it and they'll stay. And when you are part of it, like you are part of an umbrella that covers you. And like, we will help you. We will find people to help you. And that includes random people on the internet. We'll build the community. We'll have a place for people to converse. But it's like, hey, $250 an hour is not worth it for a therapist just to agree with you, but it might be worth it for you to find a mentor that's been through some of the stuff that you've been through, who's risen above it, who's grown, who's learned, or somebody who's in the middle of the process and needs help getting out of it. You know what I mean? It's like, that's what the world needs. That's what I'm trying to provide. I'm not trying to provide it to the whole world. I'm just trying to provide it to the people that are in my close sphere. And I'm trying to suggest other people to do it.
Yeah, man,
you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think isolation, especially nowadays, is the worst thing. It's easy to stay isolated. I think a problem that someone you trust and a problem that you talk about is a problem that's cut in half immediately. Someone else is walking down that path with you. So absolutely.
All right, brother. Well, I love you. Give me a hug.
Love you, bro.
I love you, man. Always, man.
Thanks, man.
Oh, yeah. We enjoyed it.
Yeah, man. Absolutely.
Let's shut her down.